AM 1460, you are listening to the new WXBR, the Metro South Morning Show, PM in the AM. Peter Zimbor here with you on this Monday morning, joined right now via the telephone by the lead singer and guitarist for the Christian metal band Stryper, who has a new album out, No More Hell to Pay, available now. Joining us right now via the telephone is Michael Sweet. Michael, good morning and welcome to the program.
Hey, good morning. Thanks for having me.
Michael, I had not even realized until just a few moments ago when we were chatting off the air that you are actually a very local in terms of geography of where you're currently residing.
I am. I've been out here in Massachusetts, born, Mass, for probably 15 years, and then I'm now in Plymouth for the last 3 years. So I'm 18 years plus living here.
So I knew you were in Massachusetts. I didn't realize that how much on the South Shore you were. So I'm sure that you might have even listened to our program before.
You know what? In all honesty, I have not. But to be fair, I don't listen to talk radio a lot. I do on occasion, but not often. Just because I like things off because I play in front of loud Marshalls and Mesa Boogie amps, so I like to turn things off instead of on. You know,
probably helps your hearing at some point as well.
Exactly. I like quiet. Peaceful quiet when I'm not playing, and unfortunately or fortunately, we're playing a lot, you know.
Well, we're chatting with Michael Sweet of Stryper here on AM 1460, the new WXBR, local, as we just mentioned, now living and residing in Plymouth, Massachusetts. A lot of people thought that the most local ties you would have to where we are in Brockton here at the WXBR studios is that you guys used to frequent Derringer's in Brockton back in the day.
We did. I think the last time we played there was right before they closed down. Or it might have been a few years before they closed down, but that was in 1991. And that was the Against the Law tour. And, yeah, absolutely, it was a great place. It had a great turnout. And, after I heard that they had closed their doors, I thought that was a pretty sad day because I always remember it being a great place to play.
The new album, No More Hell to Pay, came out just last month. What's been the reaction that you've received since this album has come out? Because I was listening to it earlier. It sounds like classic 80s Stryper, yet at the same time, it sounds modern. It's nostalgic, but it doesn't have an old feel.
Well, the comments have been amazing. The reviews have been amazing. And I've been saying ever since we were literally mixing the record, so quite a few months back, I've been saying that I feel like it's going to rival To Hell with the Devil, which was our most successful album. And so far, everyone's saying the same thing. It really does, in the sense that it has that sound. It's every bit as good a record. The artwork is incredible, and it does take you back to the 80s in a good way. The production is today, but the music is yesterday. And we're somehow miraculously able to merge the two without, destroying it. And unfortunately, some bands try to do the 80s thing, and it just doesn't work for whatever reason. But that's who we are. It's where we come from. It's what our fans want to hear. And, we figured let's give them what they want to hear and do what we do best. So we held no punches, pulled out all the guitar solos, the screams, the vocals, the melodies, the big choir choruses, and all the stuff that people expect to hear from Stryper, and that's what we gave them on this record.
How difficult is it for bands such as Stryper that have been around for a while to come up with new songs that the public will like? Because it doesn't seem like a lot of bands are too successful at it.
Well, I think, this is just my opinion. I think my biggest gift here on earth is songwriting. Beyond singing, beyond guitar playing, God's really given me a gift in terms of songwriting, and I always have a song in my head. Like I literally, I'm OCD, I'm ADHD, and anything else that ends with D. And pretty much I'm driving people crazy around me because they're trying to have conversations with me, and I'm just kind of going, because I'm thinking about a song, And I record songs in my phone all the time, ideas, and I have a song in my heart and on my mind all the time, and I think that really helps Stryper to have the edge. The well hasn't dried up yet, and we're still able to write records that are relevant and still contain good songs and not just filler material,
We're chatting with Michael Sweet of the band Stryper here on AM 1460, the new WXBR. How much has the music industry changed from Stryper's initial run in the 80s to the early 90s? Now, everything's online. You guys are distributed and signed to a record label not within the United States. How do you like the way the music industry is now as opposed to the way it was then?
There are things about it that I love, and those things would be obviously the networking and being able to communicate with our fans instantaneously via Twitter and Facebook and all these outlets that you can go into and communicate with your fans. That's amazing. The downside to the music industry right now is obviously, as we all know, being able to download songs. Therefore, because you can download songs, people can upload songs and make them available, for free. And albums get leaked, and people go download it for free, and then they don't buy the album. And then you have iTunes, which is a double-edged sword. It's the biggest retailer in terms of music, or certainly close to the biggest. And a band works for 3 months on an album, and they release it on iTunes, and then people go download 2 songs.
Do you think that iTunes is contributing to some degree to the demise of the album, and it's sort of the resurrection of the single?
Absolutely. And that's what I mean by a double-edged sword. iTunes is great in the sense that you can get your music instantaneously, and there's something to be said for that, and it's popular, and it's the leading edge. But at the same time, they're MP3. The quality's not as good, and people go and download 2, 3, or 4 songs from a 12-song album, and that part stinks for the band because the band just worked their cans off and spent a fortune making an album.
Now, Stryper had a big run in the 80s. Correct me if I'm wrong, for most of the 90s, if not all of the 90s, maybe not the early 90s, Stryper was broken up, or you were not in the band.
I left the band in 92, and we reunited to tour in 03. So I was out for almost 11 years.
In retrospect, do you think that it was the right time to take a break from the band and the right time to rejoin the band? As the 90s is when there was all that backlash against bands from your era, and I think around 03 is when some of the nostalgic feel in some of those bands resurrected.
Yeah, I tell you, that had nothing to do with our reuniting. I mean, it was more about for us. I kept saying, when it's the right time, when it feels right, when God wants us to do it, that sort of thing. And it just didn't feel right. And in 03, we had done a couple of appearances, and it started to feel right and feel like, okay, maybe enough has taken place over the years where we can go out and do this again. And we did, obviously. But you know what? We could have continued. I mean, we didn't stop making music because of the 90s. We stopped making music and broke up as a band because of internal issues. There was a lot of stuff going on. I talk about in my book that's coming out next year, where it just wasn't happening anymore. The magic was gone. The honeymoon was over, so to speak. So I left. I left in 92 to pursue other things. I needed to break free, and I did. And a lot of healing took place from 1992 to 03, enough so that we could reform and go out and do it with a smile and mean it, and not just be going through the motions.
What was it about the response from the crowd that you received upon your return that not only made you say, let's do this again, but made you move forward with actually writing new music as opposed to doing somewhat of a nostalgia act, which a lot of bands from that era do?
Right. Well, the tour was actually called a celebration tour. It wasn't an official reuniting. We were just going to go and tour, and that was going to be the end of it. And then because the tour went so well and things were very, very great on that tour, and everyone was feeling like, okay, wow, let's keep doing this, let's continue on. That's when I had recorded a solo album, and I was shopping that, and I had a lot of interest, and we decided to make that album a Stryper album. Took a lot of flack for that from people, saying, oh, it's just another solo album, it's not really a Stryper album. And the funny thing is I've written all the Stryper songs and produced all the records from day one. Co-produced all the early ones and produced all the new ones from 03 to now. So when people say it's just another solo album, the two go hand in hand.
There's a lot of you wrapped up in Stryper no matter how you do it.
Exactly. And, what a lot of people don't know either is if you were to listen to the solo version of Reborn and listen to the Stryper version of Reborn, you won't be able to tell the difference.
Now, you mentioned earlier, you said that God didn't think it was right for you guys to continue making music at one point in the 90s. You guys are an in-your-face religious band. You guys make no bones about it that you guys do have Christian beliefs, which you guys do speak about in your music. The juxtaposition between being a hard rock metal band and a Christian band, has there ever been any interesting scenarios that have arisen with you guys playing on shows with bands who don't share your beliefs? Because let's face facts, within the genre of metal, there are some bands whose entire brand is the antithesis to what you guys talk about in your music.
Exactly, and it's okay for them to do it, but not okay for us to do it.
Explain.
You know what I mean? I've always got a kick out of that, and I find that laughable. You know, why can't all these bands that are satanic go out and do it and not get poked fun at or questioned or put on the microscope? But then a Christian band comes along and plays metal, and then they're a joke. It's a contradiction, and it's unfair. And you know, Stryper's been a band. I mean, the thing is about Stryper, the difference between Stryper and other Christian rock bands or metal bands is Stryper is a rock band that became Christians. All the other Christian bands, or most of them, are Christians that became a rock band. You know, we grew up on the streets of L.A. We were playing with Rat, Motley Crue, and Guns N' Roses, and all these bands back in, 81, 82, 83, 84. And we decided that we didn't want that path anymore. We were getting drunk and drugged up and, with different women night after night, just like the rest of them. But it led us to nowhere. I hated it. I didn't like waking up in fountains, passed out, on my face. And I just felt like, okay, this is stupid. What does this get you? It ages you, or it'll outright kill you. And I don't need this. This isn't rock and roll. This isn't the rock and roll I want. So we got out of it. We decided, you know what? We had gone to church earlier on in our lives, and we felt like we want to get back to that. We want to get back to something that does, keep you clean and sober, and that does mean something. And at the end of our lives, we can be proud of, instead of how many joints we smoked or how many, how many drugs we took or alcohol we drank or whatever. It's like, who cares? Gene Simmons counts how many women he slept with. Wow, well, that's something to be proud of,
I think he's inflating the numbers, too.
Of course he is. Everyone inflates. They always add to their stories. Like, Nikki Sixx talks about how many times he died, It's like there's so many over-embellishments. It's just ridiculous. And you really have to question what's true and what's false. The thing about Stryper is, love us or hate us, we took a stand for something, and something that's not popular. We didn't do it to be popular. We didn't do it as a gimmick to make money. If we wanted to make more money, we wouldn't have done it. We would have continued on being just a regular rock band, and you know what? We would have been a lot more popular, made a lot more money. We did it because this is what we really believe, and this is where we place our faith, and this is our lives. We live it. What you get is what you get. And like I said, hate it. That's fine. But at the end of the day, you got to at least respect it, because we've stood our ground.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you guys came from the same scene as bands like Motley Crue and Rat. When you guys decided to go the Christian route and get out of the lifestyle of womanizing, drinking, doing drugs, and partying, how did that affect your relationship and rapport with those guys? And what's your relationship and rapport with some bands from that scene to this day? Motley Crue still on the road, for example. Yeah,
they are. And, relationship is... our relationships with a lot of these guys is great. Some of them are my best friends. Tony Harnell is one of my best friends. Dave Mustaine is one of my best friends. He and I are very close. Jeff Scott Soto, Todd LaTorre from Queensryche. These guys are all my buddies. Mike Tramp from White Lion. We've all grown. We've all matured. And, if there was anybody back in the day that didn't want to be associated with us, it might have been out of fear. And I think a lot of times when people meet us, that fear is erased, because they realize we're just regular people. We don't walk around in white collars, putting holy water on people.
Now, I read earlier that you guys at one time were slated to open for Slayer. Within the past 5-6 years, what's it like opening or doing shows with bands like that who have a song called God Hates Us All?
We view it as a great opportunity. I mean, we get excited. When we were approached about that show to open for Slayer in Mexico City, we got really excited. It's like, really? Wow, cool, because it's an opportunity for us to go play to a crowd of people that we've never played to. Slayer crowd primarily. There would have been Stryper fans there too, but a lot of Slayer fans, obviously, and it would have been a great opportunity for us. We love that stuff. I mean, we went and played a festival in Holland with Testament, and all these thrash death metal bands, and we loved it. I mean, we went up on stage and had everything thrown at us but the kitchen sink. Bottles, food, you name it. After 3 songs, we won the crowd over. And that's what happens 9 times out of 10. Actually, probably 10 times out of 10. People will hate us and say, oh, my God, this is going to suck. I can't wait to see these guys. And throw stuff at us and, boo us or whatever. And then after 3 or 4 songs, they're cheering us and coming up to us after the show saying, we were stupid. We had no idea.
Now, you mentioned earlier what you feel to be somewhat of a contradiction that people get on Stryper because of your Christian beliefs, which you guys speak about in your music, but they don't get upon bands that have satanic beliefs in their music. I think part of that might be there really is no true commercially successful bands with satanic beliefs in their lyrics outright the way you guys have Christian beliefs. Is that fair to say?
I think to a degree. I do also feel that there's too many labels put on bands. I'd rather just be called a metal band, not a Christian metal band. I mean, just as Slayer's called a metal band, they're not called a satanic metal band.
I saw a documentary recently. Their lead singer actually is Christian. Who knew?
Well, who knew? Yeah, but I mean, if you ask 9 people out of 10, they're going to say, "Oh yeah, Slayer's, a satanic band." Most people would consider them at least a darker band or a black metal or a thrash metal / satanic metal. I mean, because a lot of their lyrics, the pentagrams and all the imagery and whatnot. But yeah, how funny is that? I mean, the singer is a church-going every Sunday guy, prays to God, believes in God. So you want to get into gimmicks, you want to talk about gimmicks, instantly that becomes a gimmick, right?
I would think so, and I would say that even though these bands, might not be as well known as, say, a Stryper or even a Slayer, some of those Swedish death metal bands are so theatrically satanic that it's unintentionally comedic for those that have actually seen them.
It is. It really is. And, you meet some of these bands, the real hardcore black metal bands from, like you said, a lot of bands from, Finland and Sweden and Norway. I'm not sure why they congregate there, but it's interesting because some of them are the real deal. They really they're Satanists. Some of them are true Satanists, and I guess there has to be some level of respect for that because at least they're being real and not using what they say and do and live as a gimmick. We really truly we live what we are and who we are. We go to church, we read our Bible, we pray together, and we include God in what we do. He's a part of our lives. And I remember Ozzy Osbourne a long time ago. He made a statement in an interview that we were using Bibles and God as a gimmick. And again, I just got to shake my head when I read people like Ozzy Osbourne say that. It's just so funny. It's so comical because, Ozzy's used the devil and that imagery and that whole vibe as a gimmick because he's not a true Satanist,
Once again, we're chatting with Michael Sweet of Stryper here on AM 1460, the new WXBR. The new album is No More Hell to Pay, which is available now. Michael, you guys do have a show coming up within our driving area, January 3rd at the Mohegan Sun Casino, playing the Wolf Den, which is a nice, intimate setting where you can actually catch a free show on the 3rd of January. Any intentions of you guys touring on this album in 2014?
We are definitely going to be touring extensively throughout 2014, but not starting until April. I got an album to do. I start recording in February with George Lynch of Dokken and Brian Tichy, who drums for Foreigner and Whitesnake, and then James Lomenzo, bass player for White Lion, Megadeth, Ozzy Osbourne. We're making an album together. And we'll turn that in probably around early April. And then sometime around mid-April to late April, Stryper's going to hit the ground running and just start touring nonstop. Europe, U.S., Canada, Japan, hopefully Korea, South America for sure. So we're going to be doing a lot of touring.
Well, Michael, with you being based in Plymouth, our studios being located in Brockton, I think at some point in the near future we're going to have you here in studio. We'd love to have you play acoustically or something of that nature if you could do it as well.
Oh yeah, that'd be great, man. Absolutely. I'm a short ride from you guys, so I'm a stone's throw away. And let's just set that up, and I'll be there.
That is Michael Sweet of Stryper joining us here on AM 1460, the new WXBR. I want to mention to you listeners that No More Hell to Pay is the album available now. Michael, any final words for our listeners this morning before I let you go?
Well, I just want to say to everybody listening, thank you for your support. Thank you for standing by us for 30 years. Believe it or not, it's been 30 years since we formed. We got the original lineup. And we're thrilled and blessed and honored to be doing this and making music and being able to tour and continuing on with this legacy called Stryper. So thank you guys for everything and keeping us on the charts and keeping us relevant. And we appreciate your prayers and your support. And we look forward to seeing you on the road soon.
That is Michael Sweet from Stryper joining us here on AM 1460, the new WXBR. You are listening to the Metro South Morning Show, PM in the AM. We'll step aside for a quick breather. Local news up next. Stick with us.